To avoid meaningless chaos, humans have established society and economy to communicate with one another for the benefit of the species. However, this structure is flawed, and may forever be flawed. Higher standing in these societies equates to power over others below. Humans are unconsciously forced to consume harmful ideologies and information, resulting in maladaptive, addictive behaviour. They are lied to by their leaders, and have very little say. Examples of human hierarchy prevails throughout all of history. Through alternating methods of subjugation, enslavement, manipulation, or coordination, identifiable dissimilarities are constructed, often oppressively, so as to enforce authority and subsequently rule a domain. This pyramidal perspective naturally infers a highest point, a sovereign of absolute importance superior to all below. So how do sociologists, those who study society, describe these different layers prominent throughout mankind? Why, with metaphors of land, of course. Through the process of sedimentation, broken rocks are transported by the elements to be deposited on the Earth's surface, amalgamating over time to create a vivid rock tapestry full of distinguishable stratum, rich with homogeneous idiosyncrasies. Sociologists allegorically refer to cultural societal grouping or hierarchical echelon, and any consistently exhibited traits therein, as stratification, a ranking system for humans. One such pyramid-topping dynast, King William the Conqueror of England, enforced a social form of stratification utilised by the Normans of France at the time, a feudalistic ladder of hereditary control. The king would completely retain possession of the land, leasing sections to loyal subjects in the faith. After swearing utter fealty, a baron could procure land and power in return for organised, total service. In exchange for military labour, manors ascertained by wealthy barons could then be relinquished to pursuant knights, expected to enlist in conflict at the summoning of the king to defend the realm. These knights controlled the serfs of the kingdom, bottom of the pyramid, rightless peasants, subservient to their overrulers. With no wealth often ascribed to the poor, they were utilised and uncared for. The ancient Hindu text Manusmriti aided in the formulation of Hindu law and the caste system, an additional format of funnel-shaped stratification. Hindu believed work, religion and duty to be the cornerstones of Indian existence, and accomplishment in those fields to attribute to the individual's next life. They orchestrated the division of Indian society into 4 distinct and described categories, or varnas, consisting of little social mobility. Similar to the serfs of feudalism, the Shudras of caste were regarded as incongruous facets to society, living primarily for the whims of their abundantly prominent potentates. They were expected to clean latrines, sweep streets, and engage in laborious activities for a pittance, or nothing, in return. Further up the ladder, the Vaishyas, farmers, peddlers and moguls, were revered far more than Shudras due to their placement in society. The rung above accommodates Kshatriyas, warriors, rulers and bosses, and at the very precipice of the ladder persists the Brahmin, the spiritually enlightened, priests, teachers and righteous scholars. Aside from the 4 main varnas, there is another class so widely discriminated against they would be considered on the ground below the first rung. These are called the Dali, the disregarded, the untouchables, named by the rich, wealthy and the powerful. Interaction between varnas was limited, sometimes non-existent. Due to its anti-meritocratic principles, this model of classification was abolished in the 50s, but it is still practiced in some places of India. Stigmata persist to this day around the caste system, and many Kshatriyas and Brahmin adamantly clutch their titles to their chest. Dali are tortured, murdered, ignored. Removal of superiority complexes can be an arduous process, especially when it's ingrained within religion, and similar stigma exists the world over. This is further demonstrated between the years of 1948 and 1991, when as a result of economic difficulty following the Great Depression and World Wars, South Africa, ruled by a white minority, the Afrikaner National Party, introduced and mandatorily enforced the apartheid. This was a political system of extreme racial segregation in which the rights of black citizens were massively restricted. The country found itself economically and socially asunder. Black people were torn of simple rights and were forced to use inferior facilities to white people. President Frederick Willem de Klerk and Nelson Mandela successfully ended the apartheid of South Africa, the latter becoming the first black president of his nation. The apartheid sets a regarded precedent for political abuse of power, cultural disregard, and ethnic maltreatment. Despite this, similar forms of superficial inequality persist throughout the modern world, even in Britain. The industrial era ushered in an alternate approach to stratification for Britain. Statisticians classified the British population by occupation, and by 1911 introduced the Registrar's General Scale, and with it, social class. Though first used to judge infant mortality, this new faulted and misogynistic system measured the overall wealth of families determined by the income earned by males exclusively. Social classification depended on the profession, with unskilled and semi-skilled labourers at the bottom, and professional and intermediately skilled workers at the top. Despite many imperfections, British society flowed with productive, unpredictable, and unprecedented synergy. Emile Durkheim and Talcott Parsons argued stratification to be an inevitable facet of society. Much like the then contemporary RG scale, they believed in division based on predisposed, often ascribed attributes. Davis and Moore in 1967 suggested role allocation to be essential to a thriving society, with a reward program required to incentivize those with undesirable jobs. Durkheim founded the functionalist perspective whilst researching societal solidarity. He aimed to understand which harmonic functions of society help to keep it together. He discovered two models of functional integration society often adheres to: biological, physiologically driven integration, which focuses on dependency, sustainability and survival, and mechanized integration, which concerns structures within society, such as education, religion, labour and interests. Durkheim asserted these two models to explain human connectivity, interdependence and solidarity. These functionalists use the human body to allegorically refer to aspects of a breathing, moving civilization, believing each part to be necessary regardless of any inequality. Severance or infection of a subcultural limb for conservative functionalists would result in great detriment to the societal body. Parsons fought a collective conscience-driven, morally guided society to thrive via constructed functions in order to keep a comfortable equilibrium. In this way, they each argued inequality, this hierarchy to therefore be unavoidable and necessary. They viewed the dominative methodology and ranking approaches as pieces of a whole. Without these constructed methods, functionalists agree that this whole would collapse in on itself. Today, functionalism is widely disregarded for its anachronistic considerations of members of society and deterministic view on human freedom and peace. Similar to functionalism, the RG scale found itself obsolete owing to its narrow-viewed inability to account for other contributing factors, and the patriarchal approach growing more redundant with the passage of time. Unable to account for the disabled, unemployed, or students, the RG scale was later replaced by the National Statistics Socioeconomic Classification System set up by John Goldthorpe in 1997. The contemporary NSSEC approach considers all genders based on occupation and employment rate, range of government over others, relative promotional prospects, overall income and salary scales. Still similar to a pyramid, however, labour classification is now divided into 8 key levels with managerial, professional and intermediate jobs sitting on top. Meanwhile, the ceaselessly unemployed and semi-routine ordinary occupational workers dwell at the foundations. Regardless of classification, British members of society all legally possess the same rights and levels of freedom. Compared to the aforementioned methods of stratification, class systems benefit from impersonal judgment without lawful regard for religion or political bias. Nonetheless, subjective self-perspective is overlooked. Full-time students are unaccounted for, inequity is rampant, impoverishment at birth can prove a detriment to a person's potential, labour casualisation has inflated, and the white collar can sometimes evade justice based solely on wealth-concerned merit. Engels established a correlation between health and labour in 1845, proving infantile mortality to be lower for the upper classes when compared to the working. Over the past century and a half, adjustment in the name of fairness has improved such conditions, however not entirely. In 2017 it was revealed that 14 million people live in poverty, an increase of 1 million in the past decade, and 24.4% of English households reported an unacceptable standard of living in 2013 compared to 19.1% in 2009. The UK is more ethnically diverse than ever before, with white British majority dropping from 87.4% to 80% between the years of 2001 and 2011 alone. Despite this rising medley, the ethnic minorities are more likely to live in persistent poverty. 25% of Asian children, 20% of black children, and 10% of white children. Similarly, 10% of black, Pakistani and Bangladeshi adults stated they were unemployed, with Pakistani or Bangladeshi employees found to receive the lowest average pay. Notwithstanding a strenuous lifestyle, faulty education and corrupt overhanging system can reflect on the health and opinion of those afflicted. 3.5 times more likely to find themselves under arrest, young black adults exhibit low confidence and strong pessimism towards the mostly white British police force, a trait persistent throughout the past decade. Black men were also found to have a greater likelihood of developing a psychotic disorder, and black women to experience acute stress, anxiety, depression, or dysthymia. This suggests a maladaptive state of unrest, perhaps due to a stigmatizing society. For those working, socioeconomically struggling individuals across all races report experiencing an external locus of control owing to autonomous, monotonous, and isolated activities, whereas those thriving on white-collar privilege are prone to higher stress levels. Similar to John Scott's 1997 theory of a ruling British class, Lansley infers the existence of an emerging superclass of wealthy, influential, privileged people who help dominate Britain. These prodigiously affluent members of society borrow, leverage, and stash money in an effort to retain their assets. They evade taxes, which they themselves often enforce, and in the process have trillions of pounds around the world. Oxfam in 2013 discovered that the richest 100 billionaires possess the net income required to put an end to 4 times as much poverty as we actually have. Adversely, there is the rise of a developing class defined by radical anti-establishmentarianism, with willing unemployment, single-parent responsibility, and crime. These precariat, or underclass as they are controversially or derogatorily colloquially referred to, exist below working classification. Charles Murray in 1989 suggested welfare programs to be the blame, with dishonest, unproductive people overutilising the system so as to avoid labour. They are often blamed by society for their disadvantages, despite falling victim to structures they abhor, which perpetually bring them down. The influential economist Karl Marx considered this persisting social imbalance, this divisional hegemony built on wealth, to be yet another pyramid. He believed the economy to drive society and argues the current superficial, consumer-driven capitalist epoch to be one of many unfair transitionary productive infrastructures formed throughout history. Max Weber disagrees with Marx's argument that economy is cardinal to society, suggesting class and status as a separate platform, that they are not synergistic, but two congruent systems that exist to power modern-day society. Marxists consider the bourgeoisie to stand on the hunched, aching back of the proletariat, exploiting all the undermen have to offer, their labour. In the process, the bourgeoisie grow wealthy and fat, creating complex superstructures like government, the state, and laws in order to weigh the proletariat down further. The proletariat, paradoxically, cannot abandon their post, as they serve as pillars to society, as footstalls to the bourgeoisie. Without them, the society they know, love, and live in would collapse. The ideologies held by the poor are nothing to the demonising, dogmatic, dominating, industrialised perspective of the powerful capitalist rich. We are all being held at gunpoint. In 2014, Piketty suggested a future plutocracy, likely at the forceful hands of the powerful. Following the release of the Paradise Papers in 2017 and the recent developments of the last 4 years, that prophetic statement finds itself ever more daunting. Sanders in 2017 argued that this aforementioned superclass, consisting of billionaires, were constructing an international oligarchy devised to control the masses. Monday America finds itself rammed by corrupt right-wing bourgeoisie, and Brexit exemplified a conflicted, divided people, discarded overboard by posing captains. Contemporary politics, interwoven so heavily into the rich-owned media, finds itself caught on a black-white method of discourse with little consideration for the opposition and total regard for winning. Marx believes the increase of pauperization, corruption, and subordinate anxiety will one day lead to polarization, to a utopian communal revolution wherein the proletariat will take action, resist and discard their false consciousness, and seize all capabilities of the bourgeoisie in order to stand tall and alone and reclaim their future. To a Marxist, there is no real consensus, as the choice is made for the masses with falsified consent. To a Marxist, equal equals equal. To a Marxist, there is no pampered promise of equality in sudden, undeserved nuclear devastation.